come through a unique position compared to most other YouTubers where I've used this backpack for its entire life cycle. I've had it since the day it was brand new, and I've used it to the point where it's unusable. Well, almost. I found the Achilles heel of this backpack, and I know all its strengths and weaknesses, and I've taken it through everything. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know that I'm very hard on my gear, and if it has a weakness in it and it will break, I'll find out where it is. If you want to know more about the specs of this backpack, you should go check out my video I posted a couple years ago. It's definitely gone through the ringer since then, and I've beaten on it a lot, but pretty much everything in that video still holds true, which is very impressive. It's kind of a wet, dark, and gloomy day, so I thought it'd be it's a good day to represent the death of my backpack. I should give you guys a good explanation of how I've used this backpack over the last few years. So, for the longest time, I was attempting to make a career out of becoming a landscape photographer. Then I realized, when was the last time I or someone else I know bought a landscape photography print? Yeah. So with that being said, this backpack has mostly been a load hauling backpack. It's carried a lot of weight, and it's exceeded its over 40 pounds capacity or weight rating for it way more than it should, and spent most of its life doing that. I've also used this thing for a wide range of activities of stuff. I've used it to photograph weddings, I've used it as a fishing vest, I've used it a lot for traveling. I used it as my check baggage, I've used it as my carry-on baggage, and I've also used it as my personal item. You know that little pocket you have that fits underneath the seats? Yeah, I've used this to sneak in under to avoid some fees on WestJet. From hunting to snowboarding, I've used this thing for everything. And believe it or not, I've actually used this thing for backpacking. This thing's seen a wide range of places, from New Zealand, Peru, Utah, British Columbia, Alberta. You know, it's seen a lot. So yes, there is a little bit of a sentimental attachment. When you hear me rip into this backpack later, you know I mean it. Besides all the sexy international traveling, the majority of the time this thing's being used here on Vancouver Island with our very heavily wooded and bushed and overgrown trees, trails. So that means when I'm going through most trails, I'm having sticks poking me as I'm going along it. Everything's so thick here, and you're just getting stabbed the whole time. If there's any flaws in the material used on a backpack, or any sort of gear for that matter, it's going to be exposed very quickly because it just gets shredded apart as you go through the forest here. Let's talk about the features of the backpack now. For Hyperlight, it has 3 different models. They have the Southwest, the Junction, and the Windrider. Basically, the only thing difference between the 3 of them is their exterior pocket configuration. So for all 3 backpacks, they use the same frame system. They use 2 struts that go up from your shoulders down to your hip belt area on the inside of the pack. And they're quite easy to remove. You can just pull the straps out and yank them out. And that's how I've done it when I wanted to use this backpack as my carry-on item. I've just yanked out the frame, and that's able to make it compress down a lot smaller. You can conform it around and fold it in half and make it tuck away somewhere tight. Like I said, we're trying to jam as much stuff in here as possible, but make it as tiny as possible as well. Some of the backpacks I looked at potentially getting to replace this, it's a little bit more difficult to remove the frame. The frame struts itself have kind of disformed throughout the years too. I know some of them have more of a bend than the others. You kind of can bend them back, but they're never quite perfect, and they're starting to get a bunch of like waves and bumps in them too. I don't really notice it as I wear it. It just cosmetically, it looks a bit funky when you take them out. When you put it back in, even though the one's kind of bent more than the other, it just kind of reforms from the weight of your gear inside of your backpack and pressed against you. It just conforms back to your body. So the frame bars are made out of aluminum. They're just like these thin sheets of it with kind of like a D shape on the top of it. I wish they went with some sort of lighter and stiffer material. You can get aftermarket frame struts. They're a third the weight and reportedly stiffer than them. I wish from the factory they came that way from Hyperlight. Save a lot more weight out of the backpack too. Yeah, so the frame is also the Achilles heel of the backpack. We'll come to that later. Another key feature of this backpack compared to other ultralight backpacks is all of its attachment points. You can just go nuts with attaching stuff to the outside of it, especially if you want to do kind of weird stuff as I've been doing. You don't want to use it primarily for backpacking. If you want to attach a bunch of fun stuff on the outside, you totally can with this backpack. There's numerous different ways to compress things down. There's some of the straps I haven't been a fan of. There's a bottom one here by your water bottle pocket that I find for some reason it will snag up and then they'll pull tight with itself. Probably hooks onto branches or whatnot. But that'll pull tight, and then it makes it pretty tricky to grab stuff, especially because I like to stick my bear spray in the pocket right in the front here. It can make it a little bit tighter than I'd like to. Sometimes I'll just pull the strap out so it's not tied in, just so that's not happening. It's kind of annoying then, because then you have this buckle and strap flapping around everywhere. I guess the other option is just to cut it off, but I do like having it there as an option. The Y strap too on the top is very nice. I fit a beer canister on top of there, pack rafts, snowboards, tons of stuff. One side of it's detachable, so you can hook it and loop it around and snap and really get a good bite onto things. When I have my snowboard hanging up the top, I'd snap it and pull it through and the lock on itself. What can happen with the Y strap though and the frame design is that the backpack will fold in on itself if you pull too tight on it. So just keep mindful of that. You never want to put enough tension on it where it starts to disform the backpack. It has two sides to compression straps. The close of the backpack it's a roll top closure. You can either clip it onto yourself or you can clip it onto the sides. How I've been doing it lately is I've been clipping it to itself on the top. But when you do that, now you have these two long straps that just sit there and you end up having to tuck it into your water bottle pocket. It is nice though if you want to stick something on the back, then you can use these to strap something along the side there and then just use the clips on the top. It gives you a lot of options, but at the same time too, it's too many options. And for me, as I've been trying to shave weight on my backpack, I've been trying to make things a lot more streamlined and simple, so then I have all these straps everywhere. Kind of get a little annoying. What I'm trying to say is I just wish the straps were removable, so I could have the straps there when I want them and then take it off when I don't need them. The thing is, I just don't want to cut up a $400 backpack. As for all the attachment points on the backpack, I reefed on them way too much and put way too much weight on them and stress, just trying to compress the backpack and hold all my heavy stuff on the outside, and none of them have ripped on me. They are showing some wear around the stitching, but it still holds a lot of weight. As of recently, I've been using the pack for a lot of weighted hikes for my training, overloading the backpack a ton, and it hasn't caused any of the attachment points to rip. The stitching on it has been phenomenal. So the pockets on the outside come up to like 9.5 liters. I found it to be quite nice. I wish this back pocket was a little bit taller and came up higher on the backpack, because I find quite often I'm stuffing some stuff in there. For me, I can fit in my rain jacket and rain pants, a few other things such as tent stakes, but I'd like to be able to stick a couple more things inside of there. If you really force it, you can get stuff to sit in there, but with lightweight stuff, you don't really want to be cramming it all in to the point where like you could worry about stuff crushing itself. So I just wish the pocket came up a little bit taller. The fabric has been very tough. Like in my original video of this backpack, I showed that I dented my aluminum cook pot, but it didn't even do a single thing to the fabric. A few years since, now this can start to get a couple little holes throughout it, but it's never been anything of a concern. And for me, I found the water bottle pockets to be nice and have easy access to stuff in there. I'm able to toss my smart water bottles in the back and grab it and yank it out. I don't have very good flexibility, about as inflexible as they come, but I'm able to reach back there and grab them. The fabric on the outside is made out of this hardline material that appears to just be a nylon with Dyneema strands woven into it. It's been very durable. It definitely has significantly more rips in it throughout, along the back pocket and the hip belt pockets compared to the main body of the pack that's made out of Dyneema. All right, now let's start talking about my dislikes of the backpack. I'm really gonna lean into it hard right now. Okay, this is my hot take for the backpack and something I think that's totally dumb about it. And that's the fact that they taped all the seams on the inside of it. So taping all the seams in the backpack, they taped the majority of the seams on the backpack, except for the point where most of the water would hit the backpack and enter into it. Up where the shoulder straps attach, they didn't tape the seams to that area, and that's where the majority of the water would come through on the backpack. Because if you think about it, where is water going to hit when it's fully loaded and water's coming down on top of it? This is the most exposed part on the backpack, and this is where water comes into it. Not to tape the seams here, but tape it everywhere else just seems pointless in my mind. It just seems to be a marketing thing and a big cash grab. They could have saved weight and saved cost of the backpack if they just didn't tape the seams on it. That's my take on it. I should mention too, all the seam tape on the inside is starting to lift off. So after all these years, I definitely would never trust the waterproofing of that, just from look how frayed up and peeled up it's getting. It's not looking very healthy, so there's that also to it. If you're in the pouring rain for multiple hours, it's going to accumulate a decent amount of water in the bottom. Probably about a half a mouthful worth, if that makes sense. I definitely didn't drink it. I just gauged it. Not that weird. I'm just joking. Not really. Okay, one of my other gripes with the backpack is that we have a mesh knitting on the inside for a water bladder. I don't really understand why they stick it on this backpack. The type of person that's using this backpack isn't going to be using a water bladder on the inside. The mesh netting on the inside just totally shredded it apart too on me. I ended up cutting it out just because it was just getting in the way and things would get stuck in there, but it wouldn't fully hold it. And it being like a funnel for things to just get lost inside the pack. Another thing they have too is like they have an access point for when you have a water bladder for a hose to come out. I really don't like water bladders. I think they could have done without this and just save some weight on it, but at the same time too, it's like it's never bothered me. I think about it once a year. Just ripped it open too, and Velcro looks brand new on it. Maybe opened this less than 5 times. All the dust in there is coming out from Utah probably. It smelled kind of funny. The Velcro. I am not a fan of this Velcro. It sucks. I wish they just put something in there to hold some tension along it. That would have been a lot nicer to do. Especially now that I'm wearing an Alpha Direct layer. That stuff just sticks to it, and it's a pain to grab anything on my backpack while I'm wearing Alpha Direct. All right, let's talk about the durability of the backpack. This is the part where it's really impressed me. Like I mentioned, it uses for a wide range of stuff, and if there's one thing you can take away from this video is that, wow, this guy's really beat the living crap out of this backpack and it's still ticking. Well, kinda. The bottom of the backpack is kind of starting to look like Swiss cheese. It's not completely ripped through. If you hold it up to the light, you can see light coming through very clearly in certain spots. Luckily, the bottom's made of Dyneema, so for people that don't know, Dyneema is a composite fabric made with multiple layers glued together. So if you shred one of the layers of the Dyneema, there's other layers of it underneath. If you have a bad abrasion, it's going to be fine. The majority of the wear and tear on the bottom of the pack came from an uncontrolled slide down a moraine. Yeah, I was pretty bloody afterwards and pretty banged up, but the backpack was still fine. It took some big slices on the bottom. You know, I ripped my shorts in half and my shins were like ground beef afterwards. So, yeah, that would have shredded any backpack. Okay, now let's talk about the Achilles heel of the backpack. So typically when something breaks, you're going to be upset with it, but you know, honestly, I've got my money's worth out of this pack. I feel very satisfied with it. If I was to buy a traditional backpack instead of this one and get one up made out of nylon, I would have gone through 2 of those in the time I've used this one. The frame of the backpack, how it attaches up to by your shoulders, that when you have all the weight on it, it transfers right onto here and it pulls backwards, up and back from the pack. And what slowly happened throughout time is that it's pulled away and ripped the fabric apart, ripped the Dyneema apart. It was totally fine until it finally just let go on me. Now, I didn't initially notice it happening while I was doing one of my weighted hikes, but when I got home and unloaded everything, I noticed both the frame stays had ripped down about a few inches on the pack. And now I loaded up with weight. It feels like a combination between a frameless and a framed backpack. So it's kind of framed up into where your shoulder blades are, which feels kind of awkward, but it still transfers a lot of the weight down to your hips. Yeah, now the pack's to the point now where if I was to do a very long hike, I just wouldn't trust it in case something like catastrophic happened with it. It would probably be fine, but when you're pushing it and you're going to places, especially since it's still winter in the mountains, I don't want to risk going to the mountains with a pack like this. Obviously, do a nice summer hike, it'd be no problem. Grab this thing, still go for it. I probably could use this backpack now with removing the frame stays out of it and then just use it as a frameless pack. And probably start cutting away all the other straps and make it super ultralight. I might actually do that now that I say that out loud. I'm just gonna weenie the living jeepers out of this thing. Would you guys like to see that? I should do that. I should cut off all the straps, just cut off the hip belt, cut out the frame. Let's Frankenstein this pack and see how light we can get it and see what kind of pack it can turn into. Might turn out to be a really nice ultralight pack. That's a good idea. I noticed that the frame was starting to give about near the end of 2023. I was seeing that the fabric's starting to stretch out there and I was getting a bit worried about it, because at that point I was about to leave for New Zealand for a few months and I knew I was going to be using this thing a ton. But it still held up throughout the whole trip and then all of last year as well. So the fact that it just ripped recently on me after me even noticing it, the fabric was starting to go about, you know, a year and a half ago, I would say that's done pretty well. I feel like too, while the fabric's starting to stretch out around the frame, its ability to carry weight hasn't been as efficient as it was when it was new. I just find that it kind of shoves down. Even down lower, I can feel it. The frame stays feel quite a bit looser and they're poking down hard into the bottom. The way it carries its weight, it wasn't as comfortable as it once was. A nice spot to show how the fabric is held up well is that where I carry my tripod when I go hiking. So along the shoulder straps, I take my tripod and just sling it along the webbing on the bottom where your shoulder straps attach, and it kind of rubs up against the side of the pack there. The Dyneema itself is held up quite well. It just shows a bit of wear on the side there, but the webbing itself has been totally fine. You can see it's faded more on the side where my tripod goes compared to the other side where I never put it. It's definitely a lot more worn down, but like I've been doing it for years there and nothing has ripped through there. The fabric of the backpack is starting to get very crinkly and worn down looking. It's still functionally does the same, just cosmetically it's not as pretty as it used to be. On the inside of the fabric too, where it is getting all crinkly, the Dyneema strands are starting to fray up quite a bit. So you got lots of loose threads in there, but structurally the fabric is still fine. Hip belt pockets are starting to get a little bit of holes in them and I feel like it's ready to let go. If I was to catch something on it and really tugged on there, it'd probably rip it right in half. All the lamination for the hardline material is starting to lift off. It's causing this weird yellowish look to it. Probably a bunch of dirt in there. So what are my final thoughts on the Southwest 3400 or Southwest 5500 as it's called now? Well, this one's coming up on 5 years old and it was one of the ones that was originally manufactured in the United States. They've moved their factory down to Mexico now to do their manufacturings, and Hyperlight's gone more mainstream. So I can't speak to the new ones. I haven't heard any issues from people saying that they fall apart, having durability problems, so I assume it's going to be on par with this one. So what are some of the changes I'd like to see in this pack? Well, I'd like to see it being made of Ultra. A lot of the lightweight backpacks these days are made of Ultra, and Hyperlight should switch over to that. It seems to be a better material from strength, abrasion, and it's lighter. It just makes sense to switch over to Ultra. At the time that when I purchased this backpack, I don't think Ultra was even a thing in 2020. That pack also comes with hip belt pockets, which I see a lot of ultralight backpacking companies make where they don't include hip belt pockets just to get a lower weight claim and save on costs and make you spend more money on buying hip belt pockets for your backpack. I think that's ridiculous. These companies need to include hip belt pockets on their backpack. Like, if I don't want hip belt pockets, I want a backpack that's gonna be frameless and not have a hip belt altogether. So if I have a hip belt, I want hip pockets on them. It's kind of the whole philosophy with a framed backpack that's gonna use a hip belt. Put pockets on it. So good for them for including them. I know years ago they didn't though. Final thoughts on the Hyperlight. If you're to buy this backpack today, even though it's made of older materials, I think you're gonna be happy with it. If you don't overload your backpack, but you're still a weekend warrior, this backpack could last you potentially up to 10 years. If I wasn't overloading this backpack all the time, this backpack would probably be in a lot better shape than it is now, just because of the frame gives away. This backpack is a bit of a gateway backpack. It was my first transition going into more lightweight or ultralight backpacking gear. It opens the door to quilts and trekking pole tents and all that other great stuff that comes along with it. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to go through my purchasing decision for buying a backpack to replace this one. Might get another Southwest, might get something else. I've already bought the new backpack and it's in the mail right now, so comment down below on which backpack you think I bought. I wanted to get this video up before I even put my hands on that one. The backpack I've ordered, I've never seen in person. Oh. that kind of threw the possibility of getting another Hyperlight backpack out of the way. If you enjoyed this video, go check out this video over here of all the gear I'm excited for this year coming up. See you over there.